when we think about faith and and the figures in the Bible, the various people in the Bible where they displayed great amounts of faith, their faith was not put in things that were temporary or things that would fade away, but their faith was put on God the creator of the universe. When we look at when we read Hebrews 11, one of the key people that stands out is Abraham. If you read from verse 8 onwards, it says, "By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing where he was going." Abraham, if you know the story of Abraham in the Old Testament, we see that we're not given much background information about the life of Abraham. We know that he comes from a family of great influence, of great power, great authority, and all of a sudden God commands Abraham with his immediate family to go out into a land that he would show him. And without any hesitation, we see that Abraham listened to God and obeyed God and went to the place where God had already prepared for him and his family. And as a result of that, we know that God was faithful to Abraham and his family. God brought about a child through his way, through a miraculous way in Sarah, and they named him Isaac. And as a result of that, the people of Israel came out from the father of their nation through Abraham. All because of the faith that he had and the faith that he placed in God the Father. We know that that Abraham was blessed. He was there were people who feared him. The rulers of the world were wondering, this is a great man of authority, great man of power, and if you go back to look at where Abraham came from, we understand that the power that he gained, the influence that he gained, was ultimately because of what God had done through his life. Another person that comes to mind is the little shepherd boy named David. If you have a pen, please note this passage down. I encourage you to read this in your devotion time, but the passage is 1 Samuel chapter 17. You could read the entire chapter, but to focus in or to key in on the faith that David had in God, we'd look at verses 45 to 48, and that's 1 Samuel chapter 17. Verses 45 to 48. If you don't know the story of David and Goliath, we have the people of Israel, the Jewish people, the chosen people of God, who were God's people, who were set apart by God Himself. And yet we had people of neighboring countries or neighboring nations, coming and trying to defeat the people of Israel and defeat them in battle. And we see that there is a man named Goliath who represented the people of Philistine. And the unique thing about this man Goliath was that he was a very tall man. He was very strong and powerful. And the people of Israel, the army of Israel, feared him because there was no man to match his stature, no man to go against this great man in stature. And we find out that the king of that time, King Saul, was very worried of the situation, and was wondering what was going to happen. And here we have a young shepherd boy by the name of David, who had brothers who were older than him, who were also a part of the army, who were very afraid because they did not match his Goliath's stature. But the thing about David was the fact that he knew who God, the God of Israel, was. He had a personal relationship with God, and there are stories and accounts of David where he would tend the sheep of his flock in pasture, and when dangerous animals like lions and whatnot would come and try to attack the sheep, David would go out and rip the teeth out, rip the mouth of the lion by himself with the strength of God. And here we have a young boy who understood what God was capable of doing, what God is still capable of doing, and was able to use that faith, and put his trust wholly on God, and was able to accomplish great things. And the wonderful thing about this was David knew who he was and went out and acted on the fact that he was a child of God. And as we read the story, we know that David stood up against Goliath, and with a few rocks he threw it, and it struck Goliath on his head, and he was able to defeat the enemy just like that with the power of God. You know, these are, like I mentioned about Abraham and David, these are just two figures from the Bible who were able to put their faith in God and accomplish great things. But the wonderful thing is that there is nothing different about those two people than is different about us as believers in Jesus Christ. The only difference is that Abraham and David lived in the Old Testament before Jesus Christ came into this world. See, the wonderful thing about Jesus Christ coming into this world is the fact that we are no longer dead to sin, like Jenny mentioned. But with that, we have the ability to do great things, to accomplish great things, to achieve mind-boggling things because of the faith of God, which resides on the inside of us. You know, the faith of God can accomplish things people just dream of. You know, there are people out there in companies who are wishing, you know what, if I could come out of this project in my workplace and do it in such a great short amount of time, you know what, then I'll be able to bring about such a a big difference to the company and so on. You know, with the mind of Christ, with the faith of God on the inside of you, I encourage you, brother and sister listening out there, that you can do those great things. You know, you might not have to stand up against a Goliath, a person like Goliath, who's challenging you or your family. God may not call you to go into another land, but in small situations you can display the faith of God in radical ways that will bring about change in the lives of people. You know, there are great believers and excuse me, great believers and great teachers and ministers of the Word of God. You know, age is not a factor anymore. Your social status is not a factor anymore. Whether you're a male or female is not a factor anymore. Everyone in Jesus Christ can accomplish great things, because it does not matter whether we're Jew or Greek. All are equal in the sight of God. And that's the wonderful thing about being a Christian here in this world today.